Coming to you live from a small cabin in northern Michigan, but broadcasting around the world, this is the Blue Collar Songwriting Podcast with your host, Justin Stover. Today, he'll be interviewing singer-songwriter Joshua Davis.
We have Joshua Davis in the dining room / living room. And Joshua, this is usually the most boring question, but usually get some pretty interesting answers.
Sure.
And how long have you been doing music as Joshua Davis?
Oh man, I have been. Well, it's been quite a while. I got a guitar for my bar mitzvah when I was 13, and I started writing songs when I was 15. Started playing in this band Steppin' in It when I was in college when I was 20, and since then I've been doing it full time since I was 20. So that's been almost 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And lately I've been doing a lot more solo stuff, and I put out my first solo record in 2005.
Okay.
Full Rooster.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been doing it full time since you started. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was still in college, when I was 20, and it took me a couple of years to finish college, but then after that, this is what I've been doing, playing, being on the road, and lately, I have a family, and so lately it's been a lot more regional, been involved in a bunch of different projects to do a lot of writing and do a lot of teaching, do a lot of studio stuff, and just keep them busy.
Right, yeah. And is Steppin' in It playing out at all? I've certainly...
Yeah, Steppin' in It still plays. We have this house gig on Mondays in Lansing, at a place called the Green Door that we've been doing for a really long time. But it's a really cool gig. Used to be my neighborhood gig, but now my family and I moved to Traverse City, so it's a little bit of a commute.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing a couple shows, and we'll do like... we kind of pick and choose now. So we've got a couple shows in January, we got a couple shows in April, and it's real kind of sparse, but we make them count.
Okay.
When we do them.
Good. Now, a lot of the podcast focuses on how musicians make it happen or how they have made it happen as a career. Was there a point when you realized I could do this full time, or was it one of those issues where, what the hell, I'll just jump into it?
Right, that's a good question. Yeah. I never really... It all kind of just evolved. I was doing theater in college, and I had worked a couple summers this summer camp being a song leader when I was like 17 and 18, and it was those 2 summers that made me realize that what I really wanted to do was play music with people, and that to use it as kind of like a way to bring people together, and that's what that whole thing was about. And so shortly after that, I got a call from a friend of a friend that said that they wanted to meet up and play some tunes, that they were looking for a singer. And I was like, well, I'm not that great of a singer, but I can play guitar. And we got together, and it was like, it's that first time that you get together with a group of people where you're all kind of, somehow we knew the same obscure tunes, and it just clicked all at once. And it was like this. I remember coming home. I was living at a co-op in East Lansing. I remember coming home from that first rehearsal with Steppin' in It, before we were Steppin' in It, and just like feeling so giddy, feeling like I can't believe that just happened. It was it all just came together, And so since then I've been basically, I worked a couple of part-time jobs early on, but since then I've been just kind of making it happen.
Right. Yeah. In pre-interview questions, you mentioned teaching a little bit at MSU here and there.
Yeah.
What did you teach there?
Well, I still do. I teach at what's called the Community Music School, and it's a community outreach program through the MSU School of Music. It's at MSU, and I teach lessons. So it's a private studio. I do songwriting and guitar and some other instruments. And then I also work with a bunch of different organizations doing, programming, after-school programming with kids, songwriting and production, recording workshops, and that's been something I've been doing more of in recent time, and it's really been fulfilling. It's been really cool. I love working with kids. Yeah.
Okay. And another thing, I know that you're you're not just associated with Earthworks, you are on the Earthworks label. And how long has that relationship been going on?
Well,
I don't know a lot about their history. I do enjoy their music.
Yeah, sure. So Earthwork was started, by Seth Bernard. Was started by his family and by the farm in Lake City, Earthwork Farm, out there, and it's a beautiful piece of land. And Seth, who's a good friend of mine and a great songwriter and a great kind of community builder, kind of was started this whole thing of creating this community of people that had a connection to the land, a connection to kind of different nonprofit organizations that were doing great things, connection to farmers. So music that kind of spoke to movements, and it's just a collective of a bunch of artists that are kind of supporting each other and helping each other out, and also supporting these causes that we're interested in that align with our, what we, align with our kind of ethics. So, right. And that's been going on, I don't know how long it's been now. It's been more than 10 years, I think. Yeah. And it started out as a very small, Seth and myself and Luke Winslow King and Daniel Kahn and Sari Brown, and then it's grown and grown and grown over the years, and now it's great because we keep embracing new artists, embracing new organizations, embracing new community members, and it's become this bigger thing that's really connecting a lot of different people, and I'm really proud of what's going on with it. Right.
Yeah, and it's a hard balance. Political or social songs don't always age well,
Right.
So but it's an interesting approach that they take, because if you work with them, there's at least the assumption. Breathe Out Breathe doesn't write overly socially conscious. Maybe they do, but it's maybe more subtle. But there is some kind of understanding that you're not just signing on to a label, you're to sing. There's other the ethic you spoke of.
Yeah, I think it is more of a collective than a label. I think it's
right, yeah.
It's about supporting the arts in Michigan and having and building sustainable like a sustainable model for artists and community to kind of help each other out, and that I think is really unique. I've talked to, travel all over the country and other countries, and it seems like, a lot of people in the music industry have an experience where it's kind of cutthroat and right. Everybody's kind of out for, themselves and you're going to get what's mine and that kind of thing. And when I talk about what's going on in Michigan with Earthwork and with other, communities all around the state, people are floored because it seems like there's a lot more support and there's a lot more kind of reciprocal enthusiasm where people are firing off of one another's ideas, and the whole thing is growing together as an entity. And so when you look at it like that, one thing, when I go to talk to younger people that are trying to get into the music business and get into right. making a living doing this, the one thing that I say is, the most important thing is your community, because if you support the community, your community is going to support you. Right. And that's what it's all about, is building, giving, and it's going to come back to you.
Right. It seems we talk about sustainability kind of as a choice, but I've noticed now that I think local music is the only way. It's not even a choice at this point. It's like if you want to be an artist, you're going to have a local connection. Right. If you're going to sustain it, especially with the countless bands and artists and...
Absolutely. It's all about having that support, and I think we are moving away from big money, big market stuff, right. and there's more of an interest in in local and regional sounds, which is great because there used to be this huge regional sound thing, you know, where Detroit had a sound and you know, Philly had a sound and you know, there was all these little, you know, regional kind of, and I think that's coming back, you know.
And I think this still exists too, is that with, you know, Motown, it was so good that it just couldn't stay local. I mean, or it stayed local, but it expanded.
It expanded.
And I hope that happens. And I've heard a lot of people doing show trades to start tours, so I think you know, there are those options out there.
Sure.
And now with your music, I've heard, and we'll be hearing from Josh. He did bring 2 guitars, and but I've noticed that a lot of your songs, I don't want to narrow it down to political. You know, there's a social conscience there, but I've heard others that are more kind of the, you know, kind of the individual, the more internal view of
personal,
yourself. Yeah. And have you always kind of approach those 2 ways, or is the more socially conscious songwriting something that developed as you went further?
Well, I'm you know, overall I'm a very personal songwriter, so even if I'm writing something, I've never been somebody that can preach very easily, and so if I want to say something, I'm not going to say, hey, here's what you need to think about this. I'm going to say, you know, here's an experience that I had, and then just leave it open. You know, so there are a lot of songs that are that deal with broader kind of social stuff. But even when I'm dealing with that, I'm still kind of taking it at a from where I come from. There's a couple songs that you know, are exceptions to that rule, but I feel more comfortable writing from a personal standpoint, even when I'm addressing social issues.
And your latest album, kind of the background I heard about it, your visit to Palestine and such, did it seem to open? I think it's easy to assume that it has more political connotations than it might, you know. But so it's always been this more personal approach to it.
Yeah, well, even with that, you know, so that whole project, you know, when I was invited to go on the Run Across Palestine with On the Ground, it was a choice that I kind of struggled to make because I'm a Jew, and I was bar mitzvahed, and I was raised very much in support of the state of Israel, and we're going to do this thing called the Run Across Palestine, which in itself is gonna, you know, I mean, my family went totally nuts, you know, when I decided to go on this, because, you know, a lot of Jews see that kind of move as a betrayal, you know, and so there's all this political mayhem over there, you know, that is incredibly difficult to understand. I've been there twice, once to Israel and then once to Israel and the West Bank and Palestine, and it's so confusing over there. And so, you know, part of my job in the whole thing was that, you know, I'm there, you know, so the Run Across Palestine was this fundraiser, right, through these ultra marathons to raise funds and awareness for this organization and for the work they do over there and these fair trade farming communities over there. And my part of it was just to bring my stories and my music there and to share it with people there, and to meet other musicians and artists and community leaders and dancers and to soak up some of that culture, bring it back here and make this album. So when I got back, you know, I had a lot more questions than answers. I had a better grasp of the political climate over there. Right. But I'm not, I mean, it's so complicated. There's so many different factions that...
It was no longer an ideal. It was a confusing setting.
Yeah, exactly.
That you ran into.
And so the way I took it was that, you know, I mean, it took me a long time. I was really concerned about how am I going to address this in an album? How am I going to tackle this? And so the only answer that seemed to make sense to me was to take it from a personal standpoint. How did this trip affect me? How did it affect my family? How did it affect how did my upbringing affect, you know, how I thought on the whole trip, and what changed when I was there with me personally? And if I can lay all that out without saying, here's what you need to believe, here's what you need to believe, because I don't know what you need to believe, you know, then hopefully, instead of creating people that are on one side or the other with the record, I'm going to be helping people to take a closer look at the entire thing, you know?
Okay, right. This is, I don't ask these questions hardly ever. But I mean, your album, I mean, it kind of necessitates. And I had heard different things, you know. So you're, have you always been a follower of Judaism? You mentioned you. The reason I asked that is I mentioned I was interviewing. He's like, oh, he had a huge like reconversion or something like that.
Well, I wouldn't call it a reconversion.
Yeah,
that's an interesting way to put it. No, I don't mind those questions at all. And actually, I with this project, one of the cool things that I've been able to go and present. You know, lately I've been doing a lot more presenting at colleges, universities, cultural centers, interfaith organizations. I'm doing TEDx Muskegon in a couple weeks, which would be cool, and presenting on this subject. And yeah, when I was there, so in my upbringing, you know, when you're 13, when you are bar mitzvahed, you are allowed to make the decision whether you want to continue, you know, learning or stop. And I was kind of like, you know what, that's okay.
Right.
I'm done. And since then, for a long time, I was totally against organized religion.
Right.
And believed that it caused a lot more harm than good. And I still, you know, jury's not in yet. But I've, you know, over time, I have, you know, learned to appreciate my heritage and the culture of it, and I feel really, really connected to my family and my heritage, and I feel proud of where I've come from. And so, and I do feel spiritually connected in some ways, but not necessarily in the traditional organized way.
Right. Yeah.
And when I was there, you know, the tenets of Judaism, those core aspects of it are compassion, are a freedom from slavery, are, you know, a working against injustice.
Right.
You know, all of our holidays are about being slaves and then being freed, you know. And so when I'm over there and I'm seeing how much oppression there is there, and how much oppression there is that where you know it's the Israeli government that is the one who's oppressing, it broke my heart, you know, and it allowed me to kind of say, all right, you know, this is not Judaism. This is not being Jewish as I believe in it.
Right.
You know, so I did have a kind of a reconnection, I'd say, with my heritage.
Okay, we got the guitar set up, and Josh is going to be playing a song called.
So this is "Everybody Goes Someday." It's a tune that I wrote. You know, a lot of people know what's going to happen to them after they die, and I'm not one of those people. So I kind of took a look at some different faiths and some different ways that people think about it. It's kind of a kid's song about death, which is I think I've cornered the market on that. Everybody goes someday. Carrying crow, picking up the pieces on the highway. Everybody goes and everybody knows. Everybody goes someday, everybody goes someday. Well, honey pie, when I die, maybe they'll give me just one more try. Will I come back a little bit? I don't know. Maybe I'll return as a carrying crow, picking up the pieces on the highway. Everybody goes and everybody knows. Someday, oh. Yeah. Angels sing behind the curtain at the cabaret. And everybody goes and everybody knows. Everybody goes someday, everybody goes someday. Well, honey pie, when I die, maybe I'll go gentle like a kiss goodbye. What's up next? Who's waiting in the wings? Maybe I can listen to the angels sing behind the curtain at the cabaret. And everybody goes and everybody knows. Everybody goes someday, oh yeah. Well, paradise waits, all God's children on their way. And everybody goes, everybody knows. Everybody goes someday, everybody goes someday. Oh, honey pie, when I die, well, I have to wait a while to give it a try. In the lobby gazing at the garden gates, the company's nice, but paradise waits, paradise waits. marching up the daisies. Everybody goes and everybody knows. Everybody goes someday, someday. Everybody goes someday. Oh, honey pie, when I die, well, I go quiet like the evening sky. What's up next to me? Waiting in the wings. Maybe I can listen to the angels sing behind the curtain at the cabaret. And everybody goes, everybody knows. Everybody goes someday, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, Joshua Davis, Everybody Goes Someday. All right, and what's the second song you got for
This
us?
one's called The House of Princes, and I started writing it in a little village called Beidumar, outside of Ramallah, a little West Bank village. It's surrounded by Israeli settlements. I got the idea in the middle of kind of a demonstration that happened in a bit of a scuffle between Palestinian protesters and Israeli defense forces in a beautiful little orchard on Shabbat, on a Saturday, a day of rest. So there's a character called the Shekhinah. She's a mystical character in Judaism. She's the Sabbath bride. So there's a lot of wedding imagery in there. House of Princes. Wedding songs drifted through the streets of the house of Princes. Wind rose up and blew the clouds back home to rest. Gathered in the garden in the midday heat in the house of Princes. A silhouette of Jerusalem sage danced like a drunken guest in the house of Princes. Two candles intertwined in the house of Princes. Down at the picket line in the house of Princes. Standing in the orchard side by side. Oh, what a welcome. What a welcome for the bride. Walk down to the fields in the house of Princes. On my left, the ancient crooked trees. Olive oil anointed the shields in the house of Princes. On my right, perfect lines of soldiers stood at ease in the house of Princes. Two candles intertwined in the house of Princes. Down at the picket line in the house of Princes. Standing in the orchard side by side. Oh, what a welcome. How could I greet the Sabbath bride in the house of Princes, with the tear gas and the stones up above? Before the gas could cloud my eyes in the house of Princes, I caught a glimpse of her weeping for lost love. Tears fell on as a broken world, fell upon the flags unfurled, fell upon my left and right, fell the darkness and the light, fell lost sense of pleasure and pain. Oh, the holy and profane. Fell upon my hands and feet, set right down in this sacred place. And as all the sacred people here fed upon each other's fear, I saw three lonely stars appear. It was a cold, clear night in the house of Princes. I'm talking with my baby on the phone, so far away. The stars were shining their sweet light in the house of Princes. I watched the blockades flicker through 1,000 shades of gray.
As you were playing those great songs, it's kind of this odd mix of, especially with the guitar, of folk and I don't want to say jazz, but it has sort of that bounce that jazz has. I mean, is that do you think that's an inaccurate description?
No, not at all. No, and those two actually are very, they're kind of one angle of what I do, the fingerstyle thing. But yeah, it's, I have a great love for the music of the 30s and 40s. I play another one of my projects that actually hasn't been playing lately, but it's called Shout Sister Shout, and that's a 30s and 40s swing band. It's like a vintage jazz band, and with Rachel Davis, who sings, a great songwriter and a great singer, and we back her up doing Louis Jordan tunes and King Cole Trio tunes and Louis Prima tunes, and there's something about the songs that were written, all those standards that were written back then, that I just think are some of the best songs that were written. And I think there's another thing that I tell songwriters, that are kind of learning the craft, is it's one thing to listen to music, it's another thing to learn the songs and play them, because to really get inside of a song, it's a different thing to feel it from the inside and to play those changes. And so when I had to learn all these tunes for that band, it changed my writing, and because the way that those changes work. And so, I don't set out to write jazz tunes, although I have written, some that are a little more in that line, but it's just in there, and then I let, country blues stuff and folk stuff and rock and roll and old R&B, it's all in there.
Right. Some of it's almost like proto-pop music.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, man. So, it's just about, really. And that's another thing that I do when I can't write a tune. If I'm having a hard time writing, I'll just learn a tune.
Right. Yeah. I've actually both heard people talk about this and have read about it in kind of the era where recorded music has lost a lot of value, and I do think that's unfortunate. I always buy my music. I got rid of Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Not to toot my own horn, but at the same time, I have heard that if there is a benefit to it, it's that the focus is going to be on performance.
Yeah.
And I think in part because a lot of musicians have done better, at least on a financial level, with performances. And I wonder if one benefit of that would be people performing songs rather than just listening them more.
Yeah, I think that I'm, a lot of people are really afraid of where the music industry is heading, or mm-hmm. see it as like everything's going down in flames, or it's this like big dinosaur that they can't, or a lot of people see the music industry or like a career in music as like waiting around for that big break or something like that. But to me, the way things are now, is exciting. There's a lot more access to music, and I'm not, personally, I don't make a lot of my income from the albums I sell. I do make some money from albums that I sell, but I think that if people have more free access to music, they're going to buy more music, or at least they're going to be interested in more music. They're going to come out to more shows, So I think that I'm not one of those people that is against some, some free trade, some like,
right,
some of that.
Oh yeah, there's certainly a benefit to a lot of it.
Because I think, and I think that within reason, but there's a lot of people that are just totally against what's going on with people downloading stuff and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I see it, people have wider access to lots more different kinds of music, and that's going to just inspire new developments, new changes, and it's going to evolve quicker, and that's exciting to me.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's the free, which has a purpose and sharing, and then then just taking.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, you gotta I tend to trust that people have within them some that they want to give back if they're taken, so hopefully the majority of people are like that.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of mentioned you don't think that free music is going to cause the downfall of music. In your experience doing music for 16 years, is there anything that you really think improving it or getting rid of it if it's just not good would help sustain music career? Like something that we really should be concerned about if you don't think that the devil's in the free the downloads,
Oh, so like in somebody's, like an individual's music career, like what could help them? Or are you talking about the big
kind of the whole thing, yeah. And you bring your own experience into it, but something you've seen, you're like, boy, I wish people worked on this.
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is. I think there's a few things that I've seen. Like I said, I think that a lot of people kind of put too much. I think that a lot of people put too much effort into maintaining an image and not as much energy into honing their craft. I think that my favorite bands and my favorite artists are the artists that have worked at it and then been successful. Because I feel like there is something to that. Like the band, for instance, I'm a huge the band freak.
Absolutely.
And they toured Dives for 15 years before they started playing with Bob Dylan, and things started going off for them. And the reason that I love them so much is because they're road tested and they're like tight. And so when I see bands, bands especially that are hitting big after a couple years, it's hard for me to really appreciate them, because I feel like it takes some time to hone your stuff and to really get that going. And bands that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of bands recently, Michigan bands, that are working their tails off, and you can tell, like Lindsay Lou and the Flatbellies, for instance.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen them for a couple years, and I had seen them a lot when they were just starting out, and then they've been just working it. I can name a bunch of different bands like this and artists, but then I went to see them recently, and it's like I'm floored because they've just been working their tails off.
Right.
And so that, the quality of that, I think, is a big thing, and not relying on somebody else to get you a break, but taking it and making it your own, and making it shine yourself. And that's a big thing I think that people could do, and just going to see more music. If you go out, listen to more music, go see more music, learn more tunes, expand. If people did more expanding of their tastes, then there'd be a lot more. People would pull on a lot more influences, and even like looking back and looking at the mentors and looking at the lineage of songwriting. A lot of songwriters these days are influenced by what's going on right now, or influenced by the previous generation, but my favorite songwriters will look back, what was, who is my favorite songwriter influenced by, and who were they influenced by? And if you keep going back and digging under these things, you're going to find all sorts of treasures.
Right.
So there's that historical kind of lineage.
There's some research, and not just, you said perform so you don't just listen passively, but then there's also research the song.
Yeah, just really digging into it, and so I mean, there's tons of things that, but I'm excited with the way things are going, and I think there's been a huge movement, like we were talking about earlier, a huge regional movement, which I think is really, really exciting.
Right. Yeah, and it's been happening longer than I think people expected to, and I think it's because a lot of people who did major label work, they had their time and the sun was over, and suddenly there was nobody. And I've heard people say, like, it's kids having fun for a while, but the long-term effect of regionalism. But I mean, boy, I think 5, 6, 7 years that it's been a focus, and successful labels have come out of it. I think the collective movement is growing. I know Earthworks certainly isn't the only one that does it.
No, there's a bunch of them all around Michigan and all around the country.
Yeah.
And there is, I think it is more sustainable than the striking the oil one time. I mean, how many one-hit wonders have we seen go and come and they get totally ripped off by the record agency? They're in huge debt, whatever. And then they don't. They leave their community behind because they're off to bigger and better things. And so this is what we're creating is sustainable, I think, and you may not be a household name, but you're going to be able to make your mortgage, and you're going to be able to be proud of what you're putting out and proud of what your community is putting out.
Right. Like, there are parts of celebrity culture that I do like. I mean, I love that there's a David Bowie and a Bob Dylan and things, and you wonder, there is a part of you that thinks it was great while it lasted. We're probably better without it, at least it being the central way to have a career in music.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like the one thing I've noticed is that sometimes there can be a local celebrity and it gets a little too far, and that's you know, that's one thing of regionalism and the celebrity culture that probably won't mix well.
Right.
But
you're right. I think there is, you know, I'll you know take everything I say with a grain of salt, because there's always exceptions, and I think you're right about you know, when I think about David Bowie, it's like there can't necessarily be a regional David Bowie,
right?
Because it's like, you know, that's a show, you know, and that's a personality and a persona, and what would we be without David Bowie?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I see that angle.
Right.
Too.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe a healthy celebrity type structure will come. But
right.
Well, my last question is actually kind of harkens to our pre-interview question, in part because it's a cause that I've always, you know, kind of believed in. But the thing that I found interesting, you're working with, you mentioned a hip hop artist.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's for a cause of kind of anti-bullying.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that. I'm just fascinated.
Yeah.
One, musically, the collaboration there, or
sure.
the partnership. And
sure. Well, so, you know, my family and I just moved up to Traverse City, and there's there's an organization here in Traverse called Seeds that does work with, they do a lot of different things. So one of the things that they do is they do after-school programming with kids from the surrounding school districts, a bunch of the surrounding school districts, and one of the aspects of that, they do a lot of different things in there, but one of those is that they hire contractors like myself and people that do interesting things to come in and kind of workshop with the kids, to teach them a little bit of what they do, to create something with them, or to show them how to do how to build a skill set, or to and a lot of times there'll be a focus, whether it be ecological, or whether it be sustainability stuff, or local industry, or farming, or some more social kind of stuff. And a lot of the stuff lately has leaned towards some of this like anti-harassment, anti-bullying messages that fortunately have been starting to kind of really I see a lot more of that in schools and out there, because there's so much of it in our schools. I mean, when I was a kid, I was pushed around all the time, and I know that mm-hmm. and then with the all of this, the internet, with Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, there is terrible stuff that's going on,
Just go on a YouTube page and read the comments.
It's incredible, it's incredible, and so my most recent project this week, since we're here this week, we've been hanging out at a place called the Circuit in town, which is a really cool venue, and been bringing in all these kids from all these different school districts, and creating this creative space with art. There's art. Melissa from Blackbird Arts here in Traverse City, and there's music, and a couple guys from Community Records, Akili and Ben. Akili's a hip hop and a spoken word artist, and an educator, and Ben is a great electronic artist, DJ, and myself have been working on writing tunes and hooks and rhymes and poetry and beats with all these kids. Mm-hmm. And so we'll get together with this group of kids, and we'll talk about their experiences with bullying, or their friends' experiences, and how that makes them feel, and how they've overcome it, or and so we have an hour with them, or a couple hours with them. Like today, I'm going to another school district to do this with Ben, and so we'll sit down with them, and we'll talk about stuff that's relevant to them, talk about this stuff and their experiences, and then we'll write something about it, and we'll brainstorm, and I kind of go through with them what I go through when I'm writing a song. I'll brainstorm, I'll come up with concrete images that really make me respond emotionally, and we'll put it all together, and Ben will create some stuff electronically with beats and hooks that are based on these emotions, and then we'll tie it all together, and we'll record it or perform it, and it's really a great thing, because there's kids that are that have in the past been bullies, and there's kids that have in the past been bullied, and they're all coming together, and they're expressing how those experiences have been for them, and in the end they're all in this tune together, and they come out of it feeling more like a community, which to me is really, and that is what art is all about to me. And that's why I'm so excited to work with kids, is because that kind of change, you do one thing like that with kids. I mean, I remember when I was in school, when people would come in and do interesting things like that sticks with a kid. Mm-hmm. And so I feel, every time I go and do something like that, I come away from it just feeling like light, and feeling like empowered and great, about what we've done there, and hoping that experience will stick with the kids, and hoping that they can retain that kind of community.
Yeah, you mentioned getting picked on. I had the same thing, but then when I learned to play guitar and grew sideburns, I was suddenly popular. Like, if someone had shown me how to play guitar earlier, I wouldn't have got my ass kicked so much.
Right.
But well, that's great. I mean, even a lot of other issues I think tied to bullying. I mean, probably the biggest moral quandary that we're facing, people are reconsidering. I mean, the sexuality issue, obviously. I'm
absolutely
very glad people are are activists for marriage rights and such. I did hear, I believe it was a reverend who I respect, who was very much pro gay movement. But she said one thing that we've neglected to do is just become a little bit grandiose. And she's like, I think we should focus on things like bullying, because that is, I mean, I used to be called, FAG. That was
sure.
And I think, and I don't think that's the only one. I think a lot of these big picture issues that we fight and yell about could be traced to these more practical issues that you could get involved in your community.
Right.
I mean, there's how many schools in every community? I guarantee there's bullying in every single one.
Oh, exactly. And that's the thing is when you take something that these kids, instead of saying, like you're saying, instead of coming there and spouting off all these broad kind of concepts, you're coming in and you're saying, how have you been affected by this specific thing? And it's real to them, instead of saying, this is how these people have been affected, or this is why socially this is not right. You say, who has been affected by this, or who have you seen been affected by this? And then you can draw it back to who else is being treated like this, who else is being harassed like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the LGBT community is being harassed like this. The minorities in our culture are being harassed like this. So starting with that very specific thing, and then kind of pulling back and giving a more wide picture view is really effective. And I think that's a great way to do it. It's been successful. So.
Well, good. I'm excited to hear more about that, and I'd say we close off with one more song. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. Joshua Davis, Blue Collar Songwriting Podcast, and he's going to treat us to one more song. Okay, we have one more song from Joshua Davis, and he quipped that this is a blue collar song, which is very apropos for the Blue Collar Songwriting Podcast. And
it
go
is.
ahead and talk about the title.
There's a tune called The Working Man's Hymn, and it's I spent many years in Lansing, and so it's a song that I wrote while walking around downtown Lansing, seeing what was going on there.